Hello, and welcome to this presentation on the Courthouse West Special General Land Use Plan, or GLUP study. My name is Tim Murphy, and I'm a Principal Planner with Arlington County's Department of Community Planning, Housing, and Development. This presentation will cover several topics. First, it will provide a brief overview of the special GLUP study process. Next, it will review the background for the study. The presentation will then shift focus to review the existing conditions for the study area, including relevant policy guidance and a site analysis of the study area. Next, the presentation will review guiding planning principles and other potential areas for guidance that staff has identified. Then, it will review multiple preliminary massing scenarios for the study area. And finally, the presentation will walk through the next steps for the study process. So to start off this presentation, we'll quickly cover the background for the special GLUP study process. To set the stage, the county's General Land Use Plan, or GLUP, sets the vision for land use and development in Arlington. A special GLUP study is undertaken when an amendment to the GLUP is requested. This type of study then evaluates whether that request is appropriate. These studies are reviewed via the county's Long-Range Planning Committee of the Planning Commission, or LRPC. The special GLUP study consists of two tiers of review. The Tier 1 initial review first determines whether the special GLUP study review process is the appropriate venue for analyzing the request. If the initial review finds that a special GLUP study should proceed, staff then conducts a Tier 2 full study. This is where the Courthouse West study is currently located in the process, and this phase is just getting underway now. The full study results in a recommended GLUP designation and a study document with additional recommendations. These staff recommendations are then reviewed and considered by the Planning Commission and the County Board. If a new GLUP designation is deemed within the realm of consideration by the County Board, then a future site plan application could eventually be submitted, and that site plan would then be reviewed through the county's Site Plan Review Committee. Next, we'll review the background for the Courthouse West Special GLUP study. The study area is located at the western edge of the Courthouse Metro Station area. The area is located on a block bounded by Wilson Boulevard to the north, North Cleveland Street to the east, Clarendon Boulevard to the south, and North Danville Street to the west. The applicant's request encompasses the area of the block outlined in a red dotted line, shown here. This boundary omits one additional property on this block, which is owned by another property owner. For the purposes of this study, staff will be examining the entire block, outlined in blue, to consider what future land use designation may be appropriate. The applicant's request is for an amendment to the GLUP to change the GLUP designation from service commercial to high office apartment hotel. The applicant anticipates also requesting a rezoning from the C2 zoning district to the CO zoning district, which is a mixed-use district. This rezoning would be examined at a future point concurrent with a potential site plan application. Again, this would take place after the special GLUP study concludes. The application previously came before the LRPC in 2019 and earlier in 2021. In 2019, staff presented on the Tier 1 initial review and recommended a full study. In February 2021, staff brought forward the applicant's request and the existing plan guidance again to collect additional feedback from the LRPC. At the February 2021 LRPC meeting, feedback reiterated interest in seeing the full study move forward and signaled an interest in exploring higher density and height on the site than what the GLUP currently envisions for the site today. Additional feedback signaled an interest in residential uses, appropriate tapering of height, public space and affordable housing, and bike and pedestrian improvements. The next part of the presentation reviews existing policy guidance for the study area. The General Land Use Plan establishes the county's land use vision. This slide identifies the existing GLUP designations found in and near the study area. As noted previously, the GLUP designation of the study area is Service Commercial, which can also be found on the north side of Wilson Boulevard. The areas to the west and east between Wilson Boulevard and Clarendon Boulevard consist of office, apartment, hotel, and mixed-use GLUP designations. To the south of the study area, south of Clarendon Boulevard, the low-medium residential and high-medium residential designations can be found. This slide identifies the current zoning districts in the area. As noted previously, the study area is currently zoned C2, the Service Commercial Community Business District. This zoning district can also be found on the north side of Wilson Boulevard. CO 1.5, a mixed-use zoning district, can be found to the east and west of the study area. To the south, R1530T and RA 4.8 to the southeast allow for townhouses and apartment buildings, respectively. When considering plan guidance for the study area, when we step back to consider the development of the Rosslyn-Ballston corridor, it is important to note that early plan guidance focused higher density development around the metro stations. The General Land Use Plan contains a set of development and growth goals that were adopted in 1975 that further support the concept of concentrating higher density development in metro station areas. When considering the GLUP map for the study area and its evolution over time, we can see that the study area's land use vision evolved in the 1960s and 1970s. In the first version of the GLUP map that was adopted in 1961, the study area was designated an area for both general business and office buildings. In 1975, the GLUP designations changed for the study area to a mix of service commercial and general commercial. Then, in 1979, the entire study area was designated service commercial, with the GLUP designation remaining unchanged for the last 40 years. The map shown here focuses in on the GLUP map and the areas around the metro stations in the Rosslyn-Ballston corridor. In general, higher density has been envisioned within a close proximity to the metro stations. When we take a look at site plan approvals within approximately a quarter-mile radius of metro stations, we can get a sense for the median site area, building height, gross floor area, and densities for these approvals. When we look at the GLUP designations and zoning districts for site plan approvals near metro stations, we can see how development generally follows the GLUP's vision for higher density mixed-use development, with office, apartment, hotel, and mixed-use GLUP designations making up approximately 60% of the approvals. The next series of slides focus on sector plan guidance related to the study area. The Courthouse Sector Plan was adopted in 1981 and planned for a ring of development around the Courthouse Metro Station and the Government Center. This plan identified the study area, shown here outlined in blue, in a commercial area west of high-density residential development. The Courthouse Sector Plan Addendum, adopted in 1993, provides additional guidance for the area. The addendum specified higher density commercial, residential, mixed use on the concept plan for an area which includes the study area. There is little explanatory text regarding this designation, and no amendment to the GLUP was recommended in the addendum. The areas adjacent to the study area include a service commercial area to the north and transition areas to the north and south. The intersection of Clarendon Boulevard and North Danville Street is identified as an entryway to Courthouse. The addendum includes an illustrative plan which identifies potential opportunities for development and suggests how development can interact with public space in Courthouse. The study area is identified as a key redevelopment site in the addendum, with a set of recommendations for future redevelopment. The recommendations include considerations for public space, loading access, and retail. The addendum also contains urban design guidance about building height transitions, signaling that heights should taper down from commercial areas to the lower density residential areas. Turning now to the Master Transportation Plan and its guidance regarding the study area and the surrounding context, we can see that Clarendon and Wilson Boulevards are both considered significant streets for vehicles, transit, and bicycles. Both streets are Type A arterial streets and possess existing bike lanes. Wilson Boulevard is part of the primary transit network, and Clarendon Boulevard is part of the secondary transit network. Turning to the Public Spaces Master Plan, or PSMP, while the plan does not include site-specific guidance regarding the study area, it does provide high-level guidance related to public space that is relevant to the study area, which is notable given the sector plan addendum's guidance related to public space on the block. The PSMP also includes a set of design guidelines for the development and implementation of privately owned public spaces. These guidelines provide guidance related to 6 different areas: planning and layout, access and circulation, user comfort, landscaping, amenities, and signage. The precedent images shown here illustrate examples of privately owned public spaces. The design guidelines can help provide direction on the design and function of these spaces. The Arlington County Retail Plan, adopted in 2015, provides guidance about retail in Arlington. The retail plan introduces retail street typologies, which provide guidance about the types of retail uses that may be appropriate for a frontage and what kinds of design standards for retail may be appropriate. Clarendon Boulevard and Wilson Boulevard are designated gold retail streets, which have exterior and interior design standards. Gold streets allow for multiple types of retail uses shown here on this slide. North Cleveland Street and North Danville Street are both designated green retail streets, which offers these streets more flexibility in terms of the types of retail uses that may be appropriate. Finally, the Rosslyn-Ballston corridor streetscape standards provide guidance regarding the realm between the building and the street, with guidance related to sidewalk width and street tree treatment. As shown on this slide, Clarendon Boulevard and Wilson Boulevard are designated Type A streets, and North Cleveland Street and North Danville Street are designated Type B streets. This next section reviews site conditions for the study area and the surrounding context. This map provides an overview of the observed land uses, public spaces, transit and bicycle infrastructure, tree canopy, and loading and parking access in the vicinity of the study area. To the north, east, and west of the study area, the adjacent buildings contain commercial uses. To the south and southeast, the buildings consist of townhouses and multifamily residential buildings. A bus stop is adjacent to the study area on the north side of Wilson Boulevard and serves 4 bus lines. Metro's 38B line, which runs from Ballston to Farragut Square in Washington, D.C., the Arlington Transit or ART 41 line, which runs from Columbia Pike to Ballston and then to Courthouse, the ART 62, which runs from the Courthouse Metro along Lorcombe Lane and then arrives at Ballston, and then the ART 77, which runs from Courthouse through Lyon Park to Shirlington. The bus stops on Clarendon Boulevard to the southwest and southeast of the study area service these same 4 bus lines. On North Barton Street, 1 block east of the study area, there are bus stops that service Metro's 4B line, which runs from Seven Corners in Fairfax County to Roslyn, and the ART 45 line, which runs from Columbia Pike to Roslyn. To the west of the study area, the loading area for Whole Foods is on the west side of North Danville Street. This slide displays the planned building heights to the west of the study area. The Clarendon sector plan establishes maximum building heights for these blocks. The greatest heights are concentrated in Clarendon around the metro station, and heights tiered down moving away from the station to the east. The planned heights on sites to the west of the study area are 45 feet, 60 feet, and 65 feet. Sites to the north, south, and east of the study area are in the Courthouse sector plan area and are guided by the underlying GLUP designation. This slide examines the adjacent GLUP designations and the maximum height allowed in the zoning districts that are typically found with each GLUP designation. The greatest building heights coincide with GLUP designations that are located close to the Courthouse metro station. The GLUP designations for blocks to the east of the study area between Wilson Boulevard and Clarendon Boulevard occur with zoning districts that allow for buildings of around 10 stories or 95 feet, and then 180 feet further east, closer to the station. The service commercial GLUP designation, which covers the study area and the north side of Wilson Boulevard, can occur with a zoning district that allows for buildings of 50 feet. The low-medium residential GLUP designation, which covers the area to the south of the study area, south of Clarendon Boulevard, can occur with a zoning district that allows for buildings of 60 feet. Turning next to topography, the study area has a fairly level elevation, with the study area sloping down from the northeast to the southwest. Focusing now on public space, south of the study area, across Clarendon Boulevard, is a small privately owned public space, the Clarendon and North Danville Street Public Access Easement. Other public spaces nearby include small privately owned public spaces, including an interim open space, and the 11th Street Park and Rocky Run Park. Finally, turning to demographics, the study area is located in the northwest corner of a census tract. This slide looks at that census tract along with the two immediately adjacent census tracts to the west and north. All three tracts are outlined in red in the map to the left. A plurality of residents who live in this area are between the ages of 25 to 39, and a majority of the housing units are renter-occupied. Now that we've covered existing conditions, the next section of the presentation reviews a series of guiding planning principles and other potential areas for guidance. The guiding planning principles have been drafted to provide guidance for the study area. These principles are intended to be high level and were derived from adopted plan guidance. They speak to concentrating high density development within metro station areas, increasing the supply of housing within those station areas, building tapering and orientation, and ground floor activation. The survey that accompanies this presentation seeks feedback on these draft guiding planning principles, both in terms of refinements to what's been drafted and potential additions to the set of principles. This slide lists multiple areas beyond land use and a potential GLUP designation where the study could seek to provide high-level guidance in the special GLUP study document that will result from the study. These potential areas include public space, affordable housing, transportation improvements, stormwater improvements, biophilic elements, historic preservation, and public art. This list is another area that the survey that accompanies the presentation seeks feedback. This next section of the presentation will introduce three conceptual three-dimensional studies that we've developed that illustrate three different heights. The preliminary massing scenarios respond to the planning principles that were just presented, and their purpose is to illustrate a range of different maximum heights on the site. The scenarios are conceptual, and additional development and refinement of scenarios is anticipated based on community feedback to this presentation. The modeling assumptions utilized to develop the scenarios are shown here. On topography, we modeled the scenarios on a level site, as the difference in elevation in the study area is around 6 feet. We assume that parking will be located underground and that the parking entrance and loading door will be located off of Danville Street, facing Whole Foods. The Courthouse Sector Plan Addendum identifies loading access for this block off of Danville Street. We modeled an option for public space, which totals approximately 10% of the study area and is shown on Clarendon Boulevard. The streetscapes considered in the scenarios are 20 feet for the 2 boulevards and 15 feet for the 2 streets. We also utilized multiple architectural assumptions regarding building podium height, typical floor heights, and the width of the building bars. We also utilize a standard dwelling unit size of 1,100 square feet, which is intended to include common areas in the building. Finally, the scenarios are developed to consider a situation in which the study area is consolidated under one owner. However, the massing was designed so that part of the building could be subtracted from the overall massing in the event that site consolidation does not occur. This slide visually illustrates some of the modeling assumptions that we just reviewed on the previous slide, as well as height tapering and the location of certain existing conditions, such as the existing bike routes and the privately owned public space adjacent to the study area. As staff began developing modeling for the study area, we initially explored different site layouts and primary land uses, such as office. However, to simplify the process and to make it easier to provide more meaningful feedback, we focused the 3 scenarios in this presentation on a single primary land use and a site layout that responds to most of the guiding planning principles, the feedback collected to date, and other site analysis and planning guidance. The scenarios that will be presented to you are all based on the same layout, but different heights and densities. A key area while reviewing the scenarios is the building's height and the height transitions or tapering that occur on the site. The building massing in scenario 1 includes a tower of 17 stories, located close to the center of the block. The wings that frame the streets are between 5 to 8 stories and help create visual transitions when viewing the site from north and south. The open space is located along Clarendon Boulevard to emphasize the transition towards the townhouses and the privately owned public space south of Clarendon Boulevard. The table to the right of the image contains additional information about this scenario. As currently modeled, this scenario could potentially yield about 300 dwelling units and 16,000 square feet of commercial retail space. The shadows shown in this image and the images for the other scenarios reflect what shade could look like during a summer day at 1 p.m. Next up is scenario 2. With a very similar layout to scenario 1, the building tower in this scenario raises about 10 stories in height, and the lower wings are between 4 to 6 stories in height. This scenario could potentially yield about 215 dwelling units, and roughly the same amount of commercial space for retail. Scenario 3 illustrates a 6-story building. In this scenario, most of the building massing is at 6 stories, apart from the ends of the building wings that are modeled at 3 to 4 stories tall for transitioning. When compared to scenarios 1 and 2, the building massing in scenario is flatter, and the ground floor is set back further from the sidewalk than the massing in the other 2 scenarios. This scenario could potentially yield 150 dwelling units and approximately 11,000 square feet of commercial retail space. Here, you can see a bird's eye view of scenario 1. This view is taken from southeast of the study area, looking northwest, and provides a view of the eastern portion of the study area. Here is the same bird's eye view of scenario 2. And here is the view of the 6-story building in scenario 3. This next set of bird's eye views is taken from the northwest, looking southeast toward the study area. These views show the Wilson Boulevard facade in the foreground, which is facing the commercial buildings north of Wilson Boulevard. Today, those buildings include retail as well as the Good Food Company. Here is the same view of scenario 2 with a 10-story building. And here's scenario 3 with the 6-story building. The next two slides illustrate sections of the different scenarios. This first set of sections is made through the center of the study area block, looking east toward North Cleveland Street and Courthouse. Here you can see, as you move from left to right across the screen, lower density residential, the commercial area on the north side of Wilson Boulevard, the study area in yellow, and the townhouses on the south side of Clarendon Boulevard. The sections reveal the impact of the ground floor and how it can help to frame the different streetscapes. You can also see how taller heights in the study area, such as the 17-story massing in scenario 1 and the 10-story massing in scenario 2, could potentially relate to the taller buildings that already exist in the courthouse area. The other set of sections is made through the tallest part of the building in each scenario, and these sections look west towards Clarendon. Here you can see, moving from left to right across the screen, lower density residential, the townhouses on the south side of Clarendon Boulevard, the study area, the commercial area on the north side of Wilson Boulevard, and lower density residential. In this view, you can see how taller heights, like the massing in scenario 1, could potentially relate to the Olmsted building in the distance. The height of the massing in scenario 2 is similar to the heights of other buildings in Clarendon. The heights in scenario 3 are sometimes lower than the other building heights between Clarendon Boulevard and Wilson Boulevard that are observed further west toward Clarendon. Finally, this set of images are taken at the ground level and try to replicate views at the pedestrian level. This view of scenario 1 is set along Clarendon Boulevard, looking east toward Courthouse. Here you can see the tallest massing, 17 stories, and how it steps down to 6 stories and then the ground floor, approaching Clarendon Boulevard. Here is the same view for scenario 2. In this view, you can see the 10-story massing stepping down to 4 to 6 stories, depending on the location, and then stepping down once again to the ground floor. Here's scenario 3, which features the 6-story building and some tapering down to 3 to 4 stories. This view of scenario 1 is set along Wilson Boulevard, looking east toward Courthouse. The two boxes in the foreground represent building heights at the Whole Foods site. In scenario 1, the taller height of 17 stories steps down to 6 to 8 stories and then to the ground floor along Wilson Boulevard. Here is the same view for scenario 2. Here, the 10 stories step down to the ground floor in places, or taper down to 6 stories before tapering down to the ground floor. Here is the same view for scenario 3. The building in scenario 3 has minimal tapering of height down from the 6 stories as it approaches Wilson Boulevard. Finally, this last view is set on Clarendon Boulevard and it looks west toward Clarendon. The building in the foreground to the left is the Charleston condominiums, and to the right is the Clarendon Barton interim open space. Here is the same view for scenario 2. And here is the same view for scenario 3. The table on the next two slides looks at the guiding planning principles in the 3 scenarios and seeks to identify how the scenarios reflect each principle. Scenario 1 concentrates the greatest amount of density and adds the largest number of dwelling units to the courthouse area of the 3 scenarios. Scenario 1 also has significant height transitions within the site and to the northern and southern edges of the study area at Wilson Boulevard and Clarendon Boulevard. Scenario 2 concentrates less density and adds a smaller number of dwelling units to the courthouse area, and the height transitions are less significant than Scenario 1. Scenario 3 concentrates the least amount of density and the smallest number of dwelling units to the courthouse area of the 3 scenarios. Scenario 3 does not have height tapering down to the ground floor level. Instead, the building massing drops down from 3 to 6 stories to the ground, depending on the location within the study area. Scenarios 1 and 2 both possess ground floors that are built to the streetscape edge with retail and are set apart from the floors above. They also add open space and locate parking underground. Scenario 3, while also possessing open space, retail, and underground parking, has a smaller building footprint with a ground floor that is very similar to the upper floors of the building. Scenarios 1 and 2 both seek to orient the tallest massing north-south in the study area, whereas in Scenario 3, the building massing is generally uniform up to the 6-story level across the study area. These observations generated by staff are intended to provide one way to look at the scenarios. The survey accompanying this presentation will provide an opportunity to provide feedback on the scenarios and their relationship to the guiding planning principles. Before the presentation concludes, we want to highlight the next steps for the study. Staff envisions processing feedback from this online engagement session once the session is concluded. Staff anticipates that the feedback will provide the opportunity for potential refinements to the existing massing scenarios and guiding planning principles. Staff anticipates visiting the LRPC in January 2022 to review the feedback from the engagement session and the guiding planning principles, potential areas for guidance, and the massing scenarios. As the presentation concludes, we want to encourage you to participate in a survey to help provide staff feedback on the content in this presentation and to guide staff's future work on the study. Staff seeks feedback from the LRPC and community on the guiding planning principles, the preliminary massing scenarios, building height and height transitions, and other considerations for the study area. As a reminder, the preliminary massing scenarios staff developed are conceptual and meant to illustrate different degrees of building height and massing in the study area. Your preferred height and/or massing may be greater than or less than all 3 scenarios, or somewhere between 2 of the scenarios that staff has developed. Your feedback will help staff revise and/or create new scenarios for additional consideration by the LRPC and will help create a vision for the study area. We encourage you to provide feedback on this presentation by taking the short survey, which can be found through the Courthouse West Special GLUP Study webpage or the LRPC webpage. Thank you for taking the time to review this presentation, and we look forward to engaging with you at our future engagements for the study.